So there were reports earlier today that Elon Musk putting some feelers out, maybe let's chat. Obviously, right now, there's going to be a lot of fake news, people talking shit and making up stories. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt right now. But it looks like Donald Trump does not want to talk to Musk right now, and who can blame him? He just put you on blast with the whole theory of the Epstein files. And I was talking to some people yesterday. There was a girl I know from Utah, and her theory was this elaborate conspiracy theory that it was Donald Trump and Elon Musk doing this whole crash out on purpose. It was a psyop. The idea was, hey, we're going to get the Democrat Party to demand the Epstein list come out. It seems a bit of a stretch. And even if it was true, it seems like a really retarded way to get that done. See, Donald Trump already declassified the Epstein files, but you still have to go through the CIA. There's a whole big declassification process. And when they tried to release the Epstein files the first time, it was pretty much all redacted. So we didn't learn any new information. It was a bunch of crap, and people were mad about it. Which, I thought was strange because the president has the ultimate say on what is classified and what isn't. So surely they should have just been able to dump it to the public, but apparently not. Months later, Epstein files are still not released. So the idea was, well, maybe Elon Musk is trying to work with Donald Trump to get it released. But again, this seems like a retarded way to do it. You causing a lot of drama, blowing up friendships, watching meltdowns all over the internet, and everyone comes out of this with a black eye. Donald Trump gets personal, Elon Musk gets personal, and you see a bunch of people cry on the internet or rejoice depending on which side of the aisle they are on. So if that was the plan, then it was a very, very stupid plan. But this is from the New York Post. They say Trump says Elon Musk lost his mind and has no interest in talking with billionaire as public feud simmers. This is by Nicholas McKinter, whatever, and Emily Crane. President Trump said Friday that he has zero interest, Friday is today, in speaking to Elon Musk amid their escalating feud, just hours after White House aides reportedly scrambled to set up a phone call between the pair. Trump told ABC News, when asked about the possibility that he and Musk would speak, said, "You mean the man who lost his mind?" And he added that he was not particularly interested in talking to his former ally, even though he claimed Musk wants to talk to him. Which, honestly, I could see that. And the reason why I say that is there's a Twitch streamer that if you're on this platform, most likely you're familiar with, know about, and I'm referring to Asmongold. And it was a couple months ago. He was having a conversation, in the DMs on X, Asmongold and Musk, about the possibility of streaming on the platform. I remember seeing a clip of this somewhere. And for whatever reason, Musk got a hair up his ass, got pissed off at Asmongold, and decided, okay, I'm just going to put him on blast. Posted the DMs and talked. Now, Asmongold is the kind of person, at least his public persona, is that he doesn't care about these sorts of things, and that may very well be who the guy is. And so, the drama didn't really go anywhere after like a 48-hour cycle. It was out of the conversation. But the point is that Musk does weird crash out. And I don't know if it's because he's on his ketamine, if he's on different drugs, or if he's just, a bit loose. Got a bit of a loose cannon going on. So I don't know. But he does do stupid, weird time to time. And so something like this could easily have just been a crash out by Musk. That's also a very real possibility. And so if that's the case, then yeah, maybe after waking up from the reality that you just went and nuked yourself, lost $33 billion in stock market crashes, maybe he wanted to bury the hatchet. So who knows? Trump says a lot of shit, and sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's more theater than anything else. So it wouldn't surprise me. Now, a White House spokesperson, the New York Post goes on the right, confirmed that no phone call between the one-time allies was planned. I hate my ex. That is fantastic. Oh, man. What a front page image. All right. I'm not even thinking about Elon, said Trump. He's got a problem. The poor guy has got a problem. I won't be speaking to him for a while, I guess, but I wish him well. By the way, that's pretty conciliatory for Donald Trump. Normally, if you start a feud with him, all the nice things he said about you out the window, and now it's, I'm going to trash your ass. Now, efforts to set up a call between Trump and Musk were first reported on by Politico. Oh, it's okay, Trump told the outlet when asked about the very public spat. It's going very well, never doing better. The numbers are through the roof, the highest polls I've ever had, and I have to go, he added as he touted his ratings. The Trump-Musk alliance was detonated after the president criticized the world's richest man in the Oval Office following Thursday afternoon after denouncing the administration's sweeping big beautiful bill. Now, everyone's talked about this to death, but Musk has been complaining about the big beautiful bill, and I want to talk about that for a moment because on one hand, Musk is right when you have these giant bills that they are very problematic. But you have to understand, in Trump's first term, his own party stabbed him in the back. I think it took like 7 or 8 or 9 months, somewhere around there, for them to get his first tax bill passed. And the reason why that happened is it was all about Russia, collusion. And so the Republican Party at the time was simply waiting to see if he was going to get impeached. So they sat on their hands. They didn't do anything because they didn't want to sign a bill and then for him to get impeached and it was all over. Eventually they would get around to it and they would pass the bill, but it took months and months and months. And a lot of time was wasted. And then the economy started booming after the tax cuts and the rest was history up until COVID when, everything crashed. So from Trump's perspective, I think the reason why you want to get a big bill like this, even though it comes with a price, because it's shit. But politicians, everybody wants to have, they want to go home to their constituents and say, look what I did for us. I got blah, 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 whatever. And so they always put shit in the bills, trying to put their fingers, their hands in the pie. And so you get a whole bunch of shit in there. And that's problematic. But Trump understands that he may only get one bill. And last time they f***ed him over when it came to his building the wall. It wasn't until the very end of his presidency, right before he left office, that he built a few hundred miles of wall because Congress wouldn't fund it. Now, luckily, he was able to go around Congress and just take military funds and tax dollars that are already incoming because the federal government is constantly getting tax dollars. So he took some of that money and he built part of the wall. So the reason why Trump was able to build parts of the wall without congressional approval is the bill to build the wall had already been passed all the way back in 1986. Now you might be wondering, how the f*** was this passed back in 1986 and never built? Or why would that happen? Why was there ever a wall bill put together? Well, I'll take you back in time. It's something called the Simpson-Mazzoli Act. Basically, back in 1986, there was a huge immigration crisis, which is very similar, except now it's 10, 20, 30 times worse. But back then, you had roughly about 3 million illegal aliens in the country. And so this was a crisis. This had never happened before because there had been seasonal, what were then known as migrant workers. So they would come in, they would work during the crop season, and then they would go home. Well, they stopped going home. So this was a problem. So Ronald Reagan makes a deal. They're going to grant everyone amnesty, a one-time amnesty to solve this problem, and at the same time, build a wall so it never happens again. Because once you give an amnesty, you have now incentivized even more people to come to your country. He gets the bill in there, and Simpson and Tip O'Neill, he was the Democrat leader at the time. He talked Reagan into it, said, look, let's give them amnesty first and then we'll build the wall. It's going to take a few years. Let's get it done. So Reagan does it. But then the Democrat Party betrays Reagan and never builds the wall. And by the early 90s, they defund any remaining efforts to do it. Reagan, in his memoirs, before his memory totally gave out, talked about how this was one of his big regrets. I think it was around 1990, so 2 years out of office. And he talked about how it was his deep regret, his one big real regret post-presidency, was that he didn't solve the immigration crisis and he didn't build the wall first. Now, there's a reason why the wall was never built. You see, back then, both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party back in the 80s, they both wanted to solve the problem, at least on the surface, as far as I can tell. But after amnesty was granted, it then caused chain migration to happen. So what chain migration is when you have Jose Joe Bob becomes a citizen, right? And now he's got family. Well, he's a citizen, so now we're going to fast track his family. Let's say he's got a wife and kids. Well, now you got to bring them over. So instead of one person, now you have 4. And then what about, poor old Granny? She can't live on her own back in South America, Mexico, or whatever. And so now we bring her in too. And so this is chain migration, where you bring in one person and they pull the chain and they bring in the rest of the family. So that 3 million or 2.7, whatever, becomes a lot more. Now, why all of this matters is at the time of amnesty back in 1986, half of the 3 million illegal aliens, so roughly 1.5, 1.6 million illegal aliens, resided in California. Now, California, prior to amnesty back in 1986, as crazy as it might sound today, California was a purple-red state, primarily leaning red, very similar to Texas. California had voted Republican for nearly 30 years prior to amnesty in every national presidential election. Consistently voted Republican. The last time they would vote Republican in a presidential election would be 1988, 2 years after amnesty. And California, like that, would flip blue and never again go for the Republican Party in a presidential election. California is well over 60% Democrat, and it's essentially a one-party state. So when the Democrat Party saw this happen, they realized, holy shit, we've just imported millions. It was somewhere between 60 and 70% of Mexicans, for example, vote for Democrats. And they have so in every presidential election since 2000. We can actually track that data. So I think Barack Obama was the highest at, I think, right around 70%. And then the lowest was around 60. So it was a huge advantage, net advantage for the Democrat Party. So now they've just incentivized themselves to never shut down the border. And they begin to realize this in the early 90s as the massive shift began to take place. So this is why the wall would never be built. The Democrat Party did everything they could to keep it from happening. And then they realized, hey, we can create a permanent underclass of both non-citizens and new citizens, whenever we give them amnesty, that will vote for us in perpetuity. And yes, people say, well, generationally, people, once they begin an amnesty over time, the first generation might vote heavy Democrat, but over time they will shift Republican. But they could still import millions upon millions of new ones every couple of decades. So the Democrat Party, they understand the value here. And so this is how we got to where we are, where they by granting amnesty the first time around, you incentivized more people to come to the U.S. because, hey, they did one giant amnesty bill, they might do it again somewhere down the line. And the court systems are now set up to keep people here. So trying to deport people who have overstayed their visas, who are criminals, is next to impossible. The immigration courts are years behind. So This is the problem that Trump has been facing, both in his first term and now in his second. And this is why, back to the Trump-Elon Musk fiasco, why the big, beautiful bill was such a big deal for Donald Trump, is he understood that, okay, I need to get this wall built now. Because let's say that he does deport 1 million a year. They're trying to ramp up now to about 3,000 people per day, which only translate to about 1 million, which would be a far cry from the mass deportation threats of the Trump administration. You need to be 10x to have a real shot at actually clearing out the tens of millions of illegals that are here now. But whatever he does, if he doesn't completely remove them, and if he doesn't keep them from coming back in, because once you get another Democrat at some point, someone who's pro illegal immigration, well, then the whole process will start over again. So this is why Trump is doing this big, beautiful bill, as he calls it. But anyway, we'll see. But it looks like Donald Trump is not ready to allow there to be a truce to happen if it is true that Musk was putting out the feelers to talk. If they're smart, though, both Musk and Trump, they would bury the hatchet. Because long term, if you're Musk, I mean, he'll be fine either way, but it's a black eye. And he can get more of what he wants done without this feud. So who knows? We'll see.